Is that correct?
That's right, Marv. I'm looking forward to it. This is I guess my third and last hurdle with this retirement thing, saying goodbye to the fans.
Well, as one who has done quite a bit of television work, you're familiar with the workings of the media and perception of events. Now, as a player, you were always considered to be unemotional, overcool. Now, ironically, with that tearful farewell seen everywhere, you'll be remembered for excessive emotion. What set off that emotion last Monday?
Well, I've always said I only seem to cry at funerals, weddings, and now I know I cry at retirements. And I don't know. I just got to a point in my statement where I couldn't talk anymore, and it's that lump you get in your throat. And I guess that's emotion that had been built up about baseball for some 16 years, all coming out at one time.
Mike, I'm told there was a moment when you began thinking seriously about quitting. It was May 24th against the LA Dodgers. A ball was hit by Mike Marshall that went right by you, was scored a double, but the telling point was you felt that it should have been an error.
Well, Marv, you know, throughout the whole season, and maybe a little bit of last year, I had sensed a decline in my defensive game. And every now and then I would get a ball where I felt I should make the play, and I used to make the play all the time. And I don't know whether embarrassment's the right word, probably disappointment, and it makes you kind of think about your age and whether or not you are starting to lose it. And the minute you start thinking about losing it and having to fight that feeling of losing it, I think that's the beginning of the end for everyone. And some people don't realize it, but I did.
Mike, there was a time that you went through a torrid love-hate relationship with the fans of Philadelphia. Despite all your achievements, you heard the boos, you did lash back from time to time. Now, this week's Philadelphia Daily News brought back a strong statement of yours from some 4 years ago. You said, "I guarantee over my career I would have accomplished more without the periods when I tried so hard to do it for these people. Not because I cared so much, it was more, I'll show them, I'll show these people." As you look back now, were you overly sensitive, perhaps?
Oh, no question. You know, that's just me. A lot of times I couldn't understand why they wanted so much from me on a daily basis. I was unable to give it to them, and hadn't I had that desire to show them all the time, I probably would have been a much more relaxed player and maybe accomplished more. But now that it's over and I look back, I don't see how I could have done much better. I think the demands of the Philadelphia fans, day in and day out, in addition to my own desire to, you know, to excel, helped to push me to the level that I am now, or at least the level that I was the other day when I retired. And I can't tell you how much warmth and feelings and love and just what a great experience this last 3 or 4 days have been in Philadelphia.
Mike, 10 seconds or less. If you were with a contending team or if the Phillies were a better ball club, would you be playing now?
Possibility. That's a hypothetical. I just didn't think that they could carry a player that was on the decline like I was right now. They needed to get the Jordans and the James into lineups and move on to a new era.
All right, Mike, congratulations on what has been a truly remarkable career, and we appreciate your coming out to the ballpark for us a bit on the early side.
All right, Marv, I'll be watching you every Saturday now.
And that's a promo. We'll take it. Okay. Mike Schmidt of the Philadelphia Phillies will be back in a moment. Watching the Giants and the Braves. I'm Marv Albert in New York. We'll be going to the ballpark shortly, but first, back to Maria Shriver with yet another news update on the situation.
That's why they call him Will the Thrill. He's an amazing athlete, and that's why he's leading the league, and I think he'll finish up leading the league this year. The next guy, my Maris and Mantle, or Matthews and Aaron, here he is, Kevin Mitchell. Watch this. My 3 and 4 hitter, there's no better ones in the league. And one other thing, Sparky, out there in Thousand Oaks, buddy, we love you. Come on back and get well. The next time I call you, answer the phone. Come, baby.
The National Broadcasting Company, now in its 7th decade of bringing you baseball's memories. Baseball's milestones. Baseball's magical moments. And baseball's miracles. NBC Sports proudly presents the Major League Baseball Game of the Week.
positively sweltering day at Atlanta's Fulton County Stadium. Game 2 of the weekend series between the Giants and the Braves. Right-hander Don Robinson at 3-4 for San Francisco. Struggling left-hander Zane Smith, 1 up and 7 down, goes for Atlanta. Hi, everybody. Bob Costas along with Tony Kubek. The Giants lead the West by a game over the Reds and a game and a half over the red-hot Houston Astros. The Braves are 8 under 500 and in the basement in the National League West. Series opened here last night, a 7-6 Giant win, sparked by 2 home runs off the bat of Kevin Mitchell. Here he is with Tony.
All right, thank you, Bob. Kevin, you have made the statement several times this year that you are on a mission. What is this mission? Just to use to get the home run title in the National League?
Well, I tell you, the mission is just to go out there every day and just hit the ball hard and have a great year. I set that for myself once I got to spring training, you know, and I think my first game started in spring training with me, and that's when I told myself I was on a mission.
When they talk about the San Francisco Giants leading the West, immediately it's Will Clark and Kevin Mitchell, but there's a lot more to this team than that, isn't there? Your pitching's awfully good. Well, yeah, it has been good. We got a good pitching staff. As long as everybody stay healthy, I think we're going to have a great year this year. How about your knee? There have been some problems with your knee that you've had. Does that bother you? Well, I had a little tendonitis in my left knee, and I've been taking some antibiotics. It's really been helping me a lot. Took a lot of soreness out, and I think it really bothered me when I was on that artificial turf. You know, when Maris and Mantle played together the big year in '61, it was like there was a friendly competition between them, and I think it was that with McCovey and Mays and Cepeda. What about you and Will Clark? Well, I tell you, it's like me and Will got a little understanding going with each other. If one don't get it done, the other one will, and that's the way we've been having going all year. We got to keep it between each other and keep ourselves going, keep ourselves on top. And I think me and Will got that great understanding between each other. Kevin, thanks to you. We'll be back to Atlanta with the starting lineups right after this.
Roger Craig's Giants have won 9 of their last 12. Russ Nixon's Braves have lost 7 of their last 10. The table setters are Butler and Thompson, then the Thunder in the 3 and 4 spots, Clark and Mitchell, Maldonado not hitting in the 5 slot, Riles, the former Brewer, at 3rd, Kurt Manwaring is the catcher, Jose Uribe at short, and Don Robinson, who is a better hitter than a whole lot of people up higher in the lineup on many teams, will bat ninth.
Well, they played an exhibition game on Thursday, and he was the designated hitter. He had a home run, and he hit a single. And perhaps Roger, in that exhibition game in their minor league franchise, DH'd him because he knew he was pitching today. Give him a couple of at-bats. Zane Smith, over his 11 starts, he has had 5 decent starts and 6 not so hot. But it is not unusual, Bob, for a guy coming off elbow surgery last September to kind of feel his way through early in the season.
Had the elbow surgery last September. He's won only 1 game, his 1 victory this year since last August 3rd. He was 5-10 in '88. 87 when he was healthy. He won 15 games for Atlanta. A contrast between the 2 starters today. Robinson, more or less a power pitcher. He'll get a lot of strikeouts. You'll also see the ball hit in the air against him. If Smith is effective, he's got to keep the ball down and get a lot of ground balls. Don Robinson with a good curveball, riding fastball, and he also has that forkball like almost all of these Giants do. Behind him, the pitching coach, Norm Sherry. Defensively behind Smith, and this has been somewhat of a problem for the Braves, along with their base running. James, Murphy, and Gregg just back last night in right field. Gant struggling at the plate and defensively. Thomas and Treadway have done a good job up the middle. Perry, he just can't drive in a run, and Bob will tell you about that later. Jody Davis, he's struggling. He's catching Zane Smith today. Defensively, to give you an idea of all the travail Russ Nixon endured last year when he took over early from the fired Chuck Tanner. Gant played second last year, led the league in errors at that position, booted 26 of them. Now he's over at third base, and he still hasn't smoothed out his play there, but they're hoping that the pop in his bat will make up for it. Since Bob Horner left, they really haven't had anybody who is a home run threat at third base. Andres Thomas, who covers a lot of ground and has a strong arm, nonetheless had the lowest fielding percentage of any shortstop in the National League last year, and Gerald Perry booted more than any first baseman in the league. So their defense was like a sieve. Butler, in addition to the high batting average, gets a lot of walks. His on-base percentage nearly 400. He has 12 bunt base hits already this year. He led the National League last year with 20, and that's why Ron Gant is uptight. And he was uptight yesterday knowing Butler might bunt, but with this grass, and he deadened the ball right on the line, he still beat it out. I'll tell you one thing, he does not fear left-handed pitchers.
He's hitting over 350 this season off lefties, Brett Butler.
Smith is likely to be shaky early. Gives up a lot of first-inning runs or early runs. His last start indicative of that. At St. Louis, he was trailing 3-0 after 3 innings, then threw shutout ball the rest of the way, and that was the game that wound up a 3-all tie, suspended because of rain in St. Louis, and they've got to play it over again from the beginning.
The Flea, Bobby Lillis, one of his coaches, next to Roger Craig. I think the ball boy was on the field with his chair a little too far, and he was moved off the field. That was the slight delay.
And strike one to Butler. Jerry Davis, the plate umpire. Eric Gregg at first. The crew chief, the veteran John Kibler at second. Jim Quick at third. Hit toward third. Gant gets a glove on it. Butler runs well, and Thomas has no chance.
It's what a left-hander who is a bunt threat with speed will do to you. You drag him in with the threat of a bunt, and he's playing 8-10 feet more shallow for a Butler, and he slaps it by him. Not only is he shallow, Bob, but you start creeping in a little bit and you lose all your range right and left.
Robbie Thompson, good bat handler. The hit and run a possibility, but I have to think that Roger Craig would soft pedal that, not eliminate it, but soft pedal it, knowing that he's got Clark and Mitchell waiting. You don't want to take any chance of removing a base runner. Butler has stolen 11, but been caught 7 times. He's running, and he's got him picked off. The throw to Thomas covering, and goodbye, Brett.
That's what Roger Craig does more of. It's not really straight steals as often as it is the hit and run. This is a team that hits the ball very hard and is not a very fleet-footed team. You would expect the Giants to hit into a lot of double plays, but because Craig does start runners, he breaks apart the infield, and he does prevent double plays. What Brett Butler was trying to do, knowing he was dead, he ran way inside the line, hoping the ball would hit him in the back. In fact, you saw him raise his elbow, hoping the ball would hit him. He guessed, he went on first move on Zane Smith, and he was dead.
Strike one, the count to Robbie Thompson. Inside for ball 1.
You know how many first basemen can't make that play? Usually the guy with the worst arm ends up on first base, and he ends up throwing in center field, making a bad throw. You've got to give Perry a little bit of credit. Thompson's been struggling with a back problem again. He had an injection, a nerve-blocking injection, where he feels all right now.
Wrapped to short. There's Thomas. 2 out, and here comes the Major League's leading hitter, Will Clark. He's at 360. Barry Larkin is next in the National League, the Red shortstop at 337. Will is also second in the league behind his teammate Mitchell with those 43 RBIs. Mitchell leads the majors with 51.
There's Kevin. Will Clark, of course, hitting left-handers very well this year, hitting for that high average. That's where they would like to pitch him, with something on it upstairs and in. But you better have something on it if you want to go upstairs with him. He's a low ball hitter with that uppercut. But mediocre stuff upstairs, and he can kill you there also.
Here's a bouncer towards short. Thomas boots it. And Mitchell will bat with Clark at first and 2 out.
It's one of those where you really don't have to go after it with one hand, and had plenty of time with Clark running to feel the ball with 2 hands, but when he circles the ball, guy that did that better than anybody ever saw. Remember Roy McMillan? Oh, was he smooth on that. He would circle the ball and get in position to throw, but Roy did it with 2 hands. E6.
Mitchell powered 2 of them out of here last night. He pulled one to left center. He sent the other one over the boards in right center, which is part of the key to his success this year. Up a little more on the plate, and he's so strong. If you pitch him away, he'll take the pitch over the fence to the opposite field. But if you pitch him from the middle in, he can really turn on it. Tip back into Davis's glove.
There's a pitch that Bruce Dalcatner is teaching to a lot of his younger pitchers. It's called the circle change. Looks like a little screwball. You'll hear about Roger Craig and the pitch of the 80s, I'm sure, sometime today. In fact, you are right now. I think the pitch of the 80s is that pitch right there. More throwing that circle change than the forkball.
Darryl Strawberry was of a different opinion. Just this week he said, look, everybody can throw that split finger now, and it's just the toughest pitch to hit. You think you're right on it, the bottom drops out. It used to be just a handful of guys who threw it so very well, but now you've got even fellows who were mediocre pitchers before coming close to mastering it.
It's just like any other, a hanging curveball, a hanging slider. And Roger Craig used to teach it to little league kids. It's an easy pitch to learn, but some say it's hurting pitchers' arms. In fact, the Giants now, Kennedy has asked none of the minor league pitchers to throw that pitch. They want to make sure the delivery's right and the release point is right and all else. You know, they were throwing that split-fingered fastball back in '87 too, weren't they?
When offense was up all around, but they suspected the ball might have been juiced.
Oh. They're still throwing the split-fingered fastball, weren't they?
Correct you are, my man. And here's the 2-2 pitch to Mitchell. Full count, and Clark will be running from first with 2 out.
Boy, Mitchell is so aggressive. You can see he almost jumps out at the pitcher. Extremely strong. There's a lot of weight training. And even if you get the ball in on his fist and say, that's where I want the pitch, he can just muscle the ball as he did to right center over the fence yesterday. Ball carries in this part.
It's Gant cutting in front of Thomas. He's got Mitchell, and the Braves are out of it in the first. No runs, a hit, an error, a man left. We'll be back. Don Robinson turns 32 this Thursday, faces this Atlanta lineup. Treadway at second. Gregg back off the disabled list, broken bone in his foot, had 2 hits upon his return last night. Gerald Perry will tell you more about his horrendous slump when he comes to the plate. Murphy in center field in the cleanup spot. Andres Thomas had a 9th inning home run last night. Deion James in left. Jody Davis will catch. Ron Gant at third, and Zane Smith the hurler.
This is a pitching staff, the Giants, that was torn up last year. A lot of injuries. Over the last 2 weeks, though, this staff has had an ERA of under 2. It's been a bullpen by committee, and I think Roger Craig would like to have about 6 innings, good strong innings out of Robinson today.
And a fastball high for ball 1 to the former Cincinnati player, Jeff Treadway. There's the D.
Up the middle, they are something. Uribe and Thompson turn it with anybody. They're leading the league in double plays, and Butler can go chase it down.
In the air to right, Maldonado flips the shades. 1 out.
This is basically a ground ball stack. Even Robinson with that split-fingered fastball, and so many throw it. When they throw it very hard, it's a ground ball pitch. And that's why you need that strength up the middle, inner defense.
Tommy Gregg had a 5-for-5 game in mid-April just before breaking a bone in his foot. Went on a DL. 2 for 5 last night. So he's hitting .390 in just 41 at-bats for the season.
He came back off Russell, who's got 10 wins, and did just what a left-hander should. Hit 2 line drives to left field off Russell. First 2 times up and hit the ball well 5 times. You can see the defense is about straight away, although Uribe, as you saw, is playing over to the hole as if he's a right-handed hitter.
A ball and a strike. Russell won his 7th in a row. He was untouchable in May. His outing was decent yesterday, not fantastic. Good enough to get the win. Lasted into the 7th. Now he's 10-2 overall. Leads the National League in victories. Down low.
Well, Rick was helped last night by a couple of base running blunders by 2 veterans, Perry and Murphy.
Foul back, 2-2. Robinson has allowed just 2 earned runs in his last 20 innings of work. Had a start earlier this year at Candlestick against the Braves. Lasted 5 innings. Then went out after pulling a muscle in, as the press notes put it, his gluteus maximus.
And how would you put it if you had your druthers?
Exactly that way. I think it's always best to use the precise medical term in these situations. That was a game the Giants won 1-0, breaking Pete Smith's heart. Atlanta's Smith pitched a 2-hitter and lost 1-0. I think he struck out about a dozen that day, too. Full count to Gregg. Perry on deck.
They've had a pretty good catching combination here with Terry Kennedy, who does the catching against right-handed pitchers, and Manwaring the kid. They've done a good job calling the pitches that Roger Craig wants and moving the ball around. He set up inside that time, and the ball tailed back over the center of the plate. Roger Craig and Norm Sherry, the pitching coach, are kind of co-equals in that spot, I guess. They teach holding runners on very well. Which goes way back to the old Dodger tradition. That's where Craig came through. And it always, Dodgers have taught, I think, change-ups and off-speed pitches better than anybody.
Chasing over is Riles.
He lost it.
Yeah, he didn't see it, and it fell just inside the dugout railing. He might have been able to reach over and catch it.
What a find Riles has been for this ball club. When he was with Milwaukee, they had him at shortstop and moved him around defensively. Riles has played 5 different defensive positions, but he's in there for one reason. He's got an outstanding bat. When Matt Williams didn't work out, was sent back to the minor leagues. Riles filled in brilliantly, especially hitting.
Another 3-2 pitch. In on his fist, and it's popped back. Manwaring has it just against the screen. Here comes Gerald Perry, and unless he hits one out, his dubious streak is going to continue here. He doesn't have an RBI. Look at that in his last 123 at-bats. And part of that is with Lonnie Smith hitting in front of him, and Smith led the league in on-base percentage before he went out with an ankle injury. Lonnie will be back any day now.
Well, that's where the offense went to pot. I mean, there's Lonnie Smith. Can't come off the DL any day now, but he's not ready to go. Lonnie have taken a lot of walks, getting extra base hits. And tape, well, Bob, you explain what that is for. It's the watch.
Many of the Atlanta players are going to wear that little piece of white tape on the bill of their caps until Perry gets an RBI. It's now 124 at-bats without one. Clark unassisted, no score after one in steamy Atlanta. There's an early hum baby for you. Roger Craig in the mid-50s with the Brooklyn Dodgers. Pitched in 4 World Series, 55, 56, and 59 for the Dodgers. And then in 1964 for the world champion Cardinals. Maldonado to start it in the second against Zane Smith. Candy is just 3 for his last 37. Hitting a .181 overall. This is a guy who 2 years ago hit .292 with 20 homers.
And the pitch he's having trouble with is the one you just saw. He's just not getting around on fastballs. Zane Smith, as you indicated earlier, not really a power pitcher. He can zip one inside on you with that cutter. But even that pitch there, is way late on it.
Busy day so far for Thomas. Plays it cleanly, 1 gone.
And when you send that message out, if you're a hitter, that you can't get around with a good fastball, you've got to start your bat earlier, and boy, you become vulnerable to everything else. And that's where hitting is keyed all off. Hitting the fastball first.
Smith has not pitched consistently well, but neither have the Braves given him much run support. Just 7 runs in his last 4 appearances, 3 of which he's lost. 1 was a no decision. Ernest Riles takes a strike.
Well, Pete Smith, the right-hander, is 1-7. Zane Smith is 1-7. But they've got their first wave of young pitchers that Bobby Cox, the GM, has been instrumental in drafting, and they're up here now. But they got another one coming next year and another one the year after that. They've got some great arms in their farm system.
Well, they've got Kent Merker and Tommy Green on the farm, and they'll be up here before much longer. And John Smoltz is 7-3. He'll pitch Monday in a doubleheader here against the Dodgers. Derek Lilliquist is tomorrow's starter. And Tommy Glavine, who had his worst outing of the year here last night and absorbed the defeat, didn't last through the 5th. But nonetheless, Glavine is 5-2. So they've got the makings with these young guns of a contender's pitching staff.
And they've got a kid named Gary Eve at Richmond. He's 5-2, ERA below 3.
Riles is out of there.
A off-speed breaking ball. Dennis Burlingame, another good-looking right-hander. John Smoltz, who may be the best of the crop. He throws very hard and has a great curveball and a good change, and there's not much left.
I'll tell you something else that gives them. With the surplus and with pitching shortages elsewhere in baseball, it really gives them the flexibility to deal and to fill in the gaps elsewhere.
You know, I looked at some of the minor league reports as of just around June 1st. And the thing about the minor leaguers, some of whom we've mentioned, is they're striking out a lot the innings pitched, but they're not walking many. They're all throwing strikes, and that's a big indicator sometimes.
The catcher, Manwaring, A ball and a strike to him.
Bobby Cox, the man, when the amateur draft, which is up this June 5th, he goes out and personally sees every one that they're interested in. He has seen all of the top 20 draft choices all around the country already this year. Good high school crop, they tell me.
Well, LSU's Ben McDonald is almost certain to be the first choice, and the Orioles have it on Monday. Then Atlanta goes second.
They may be looking at a catcher named Houston out of Las Vegas, a high school catcher. You can see Jody Davis reminding Zane Smith to stay on top. Where the ball moves a little more and the
hit the opposite way. Perry says, don't bother. I got it covered, Zane. He sets him down an order in the second. And we'll be back right after this message. These teams have the first 5 selections on Monday. As we said, the big LSU right-hander Ben McDonald almost certain to be taken by the Orioles. The next best pitching prospects are perhaps Kiki Jones, a right-hander out of Tampa from Hillsborough High, that's Dwight Gooden's school, and a big 6'7" right-hander from Salem, Massachusetts named Jeff Juden. However, Atlanta, as we've mentioned, has so much young pitching. They could go in another direction, and like Tony said, the best catcher might be this kid Tyler Houston out of Las Vegas, and they might need catching help.
We said earlier, it's the best crop in many years of high school prospects, which more and more teams are now going back to. So they can groom themselves and want them to change positions, get the wooden bat in their hands quicker.
We told you Perry is without an RBI in 124 at-bats. Murph is without a home run in exactly a month. His last one, his 5th of the year, was on May 3rd. The 1-1 pitch from Robinson. Hit to second. Thompson plays it cleanly and guns Murphy down.
It was a frustrating 88 for Dale Murphy, and he really hit in the month of May, although didn't hit any home runs. His batting average was up around 290. Cleon Jones, the hitting instructor, is trying to get, or Clarence Jones, trying to get him to cut his swing down a little bit at his age and go the opposite way like he did under Joe Torre years ago.
I think a telling stat, there's Jones, a telling stat about Murph, he's always struck out a lot, but he used to get around 100 walks, almost as many walks as Ks. Swing and a miss by Andres Thomas, who hit his 7th homer of the year in a 2-for-3 night last night. But so far this year, Murphy has 18 walks and 56 strikeouts.
Well, they used to pitch around him. Now they just throw him breaking balls out of the strike zone and fastballs out of the strike zone, and he goes after him.
Here's a curveball lifted into center. Butler for the catch.
But to show you how the Atlanta offense has struggled, the man who just flied to center field, Thomas, has 6 of the last 8 home runs. Murph having the month-long drought.
The trend for Murph started last year when he walked 74 times and struck out 125 in the course of batting .226 with 24 homers. Just the year before, 87, he had hit .295 with over 100 RBIs and 44 home runs. Hammered foul by Deion James. So the bottom can fall out in a hurry, but you look at Murphy and he's only 33 and still in exquisite shape. It's hard to believe that one of the best players of the past decade would decline so quickly and permanently.
Well, I don't think there's any question that the trade talk all winter and all spring did affect him. You can't help having it affect you. So it's hard for a guy to adjust his swing. I think Marv did that great interview in the pregame show with Mike Schmidt. And Mike Schmidt, the last few years, like the last half a dozen years, adjusted according to what pitchers were doing to him. And Murph just really hadn't done that. But he's still young enough, as you said, that he can and should adjust.
Let's see if it stays fair. Robinson's only hope is to let it roll, and it stays fair. An infield hit for Deion James, the first hit allowed by Robinson.
Well, wait till I get on the new young groundkeeper, Odie Kinky. He's tailored this for a hitters. It stays fair like the Bossards did for the Go-Go White Sox in '59. It looked sure like it was going to curl foul, which they usually do. There's a little gradual slope for rain drainage. It just stays right there. So the youngest groundkeeper in baseball, Odie Kinky, 24, hits a base hit for Deion.
Jody Davis at 168. 2 homers, 13 RBIs. James with good speed at first, 2 out, bottom of the second, no score. You take a look at what Jody Davis has done. Dale Murphy and Gerald Perry, the heart of their order, each unproductive for the last month.
Ron Gant, who had, what, 18 home runs last year and 60 runs batted in?
Tommy Gregg and Lonnie Smith both hurt. The offense is really ailing.
Benedict's been in 21 ball games. And Davis doesn't catch. He doesn't have an RBI yet.
So in terms of the one-loss record, the Braves have squandered a lot of very good pitching. Over the last month, the staff ERA is around 2.5, but they've lost more than they've won.
That's why Roger Craig instructs his catcher, and he has signs when he wants the guy to hold the ball, go through his young catcher Manwaring, wants him to step off, when he wants to pitch out. They felt the runner might be going, and so Manwaring flashed the sign in case Robinson didn't do it on his own. A reminder, throw over. Let's see if we can read the base runner.
Not going. Hit to third. Riles has it. The short way for the force with Thompson covering. No score after 2, and we'll be back after these messages from your local station.
The Game of the Week is brought to you by your Toyota.
Well, the Moose family from Taylor, South Carolina. That would be evidently the Bullwinkle Moose family, judging by the drawing.
No, that was the Fidwick Moose family. Fidwick, Dr. Seuss.
That was one I happened not to read, but with a 3-year-old at home and another on the way, maybe I'll stumble across it.
Get the book and have Keith read it to me.
Still on Green Eggs and Ham and the Cat in the Hat. A ball and a strike to Uribe, who fiddled with the notion of abandoning switch hitting. And did, as a matter of fact, for a while bat only right-handed, but now he's back to hitting from both sides.
I think this guy's the best defensive shortstop in the National League. You're going to say Ozzie.
Liner to Perry.
Ozzie's still great and spectacular, but I think Uribe, well, he is something.
Well, that was part of the bad blood between the Giants and the Cardinals in the playoffs 2 years ago. As we check the scoreboard, Toronto won at Fenway last night, and they're winning in the 6th today. Speaking of the Cardinals, they're in front of the Cubs, and the Cards are really mired in a terrible slump. They can't score at all. Sutcliffe beat them last night with a save from Mitch Williams, who struck out the side in the 9th. And here's a hit for Robinson, which comes as no surprise to anybody. His .254 lifetime average is the highest of any active pitcher, and he opens with a hit here.
First base coach Wendell Kim has been in the Giants organization for 17 years. Gives a little scouting report to Robinson. Here's a guy that you can look down to. He does the calisthenics. He's a middle infielder. He throws best batting practice of anybody around. Born in Honolulu.
Stands just 5'5". I've added him to my A list for interviews. He's in there with John Cangellosi and
Belliard,
Rafael Belliard, Ozzie. Those people you can go eye to eye with. A strike to Butler. Just to finish up, you remember when Bob Brenly and a few of the others, Jeffrey Leonard, opined during the '87 playoffs, Ozzie's overrated. He's a showboat. Uribe is better than he is. Oh, the Cardinals as a team and the whole city of St. Louis was deeply offended. And of course, Jeff Leonard with the flaps down home run trots. There was some genuine anger between those teams. Then it flared again last year in St. Louis when Ozzie and Jose Oquendo double-teamed Will Clark after a collision at second base. It was an ugly scene. 2-1 to Butler. Robinson not being held by Perry at first. 3-1. Did you see how long it took Robinson to get down to first base after that single up the middle? Talk about conserving your energy.
Well, he's one of those guys, if he hits the ball hard to right field, he has got to run faster than that or he'll get thrown out. After Glenn Wilson or some of the other strong right fielders' arms.
Well, there's the first walk that Zane Smith has allowed, and we're going to check with Marv in New York.
Thank you, Bob. You talked about the struggling Cardinals. Well, Terry Pendleton of St. Louis has connected with a man on, a second home run of the season. They're in the second. The Cards, who have drop 5 in a row, now lead the Cubs, as you mentioned a moment ago, by the score of 3-1. Back to Bob and Tony.
No score here in the third, but the Giants with a threat going. Robbie Thompson, who grounded to short his first time up. That's with Robinson at second, Butler at first, and 1 out. Clark and Mitchell awaiting their turns next.
Well, here's a part of the supporting cast that is so important. We just saw Butler walk. Robbie Thompson can do a lot of things. Not this
Could
time.
be two. Thomas to Treadway, and they turn it. A hit and a walk, but to no avail. To the bottom of the third we go, still scoreless. This is presented by authority of Major League Baseball and may not be reproduced or retransmitted in any form without the express written consent of Major League Baseball. We go to the last half of the third. It'll be Ron Gant, the pitcher Zane Smith, then back to the top for Jeff Treadway.
Gant, the guy they wanted to hit down early in the order, maybe second, maybe even lead him off with his great running speed, or even in an RBI spot. So it is something when you see a kid like this hitting down in the 8th spot, and he's in a slump. Some have accused him, members of the coaching staff and even Russ Nixon, that his work habits are not what they should be. He was out yesterday taking extra ground balls, some extra hitting. He's confused.
Nixon made a distinction when he made that remark. He said, I'm not saying he doesn't put in the time. He's out there fielding the ground balls and taking the BP, but his concentration isn't there. Lifts a lazy fly to center on the first pitch, and Butler retires him.
You wonder if the transition from second to third had anything to do with it. I mean, he wasn't a great second baseman, but he worked very hard to learn the pivot, learn to do some things. But he gets so mad at himself yesterday after he popped out. He hit through the bat, which he's done many times. He did hit the ball very hard a couple times yesterday, and it looked like he may be snapping out of it.
Smith has 3 hits and 18 at-bats.
Braves, including their 6-run game yesterday, the loss they took to Russia, they've averaged just over 2 runs a game over the last 2.5 weeks.
Stays fair, and Clark does it himself. Don Robinson has allowed only an infield hit by Deion James thus far. When he's in a groove, he's capable of some overpowering games. Last year, he pitched a 1-hitter against the Astros, in which the only hit was a first-inning infield single by Terry Poole, and he faced just 1 over the minimum, 28. He also threw a 3-hitter against the Dodgers.
Affectionately called by his teammates Caveman. Everything he does.
Look out in the stands.
Wow.
The bat bounces off the top of the Brave dugout, and it's a good thing that its momentum was slowed a little bit before it got to the paying customers.
So Treadway with the pine tar and the batting glove and the ball getting fouled off. Flips it. Luckily it lands and on the top of the dugout and spirals into the first row. So what they do usually is if it's his gamer, they'll make a trade. They'll give him another bat so that Treadway can get his gamer in. And Treadway's been hitting the ball very well. He's got a good swing. In fact, Bobby Cox, one of the best things he did was going out somehow and getting Treadway. Didn't cost him very much. So he's got his gamer back.
It appeared for a while as if Treadway and Larkin would make up the middle of the Reds infield for maybe a decade. But then when Oster came back off that horrible knee injury, which threatened his career.
And they like Lenny Harris a lot, too, because he's got good speed. Looks like he's going to have a little power.
Look out, it happens again. This time it lands among his teammates. Shades of Tony Oliva here.
Look at this, that's traditional. The white flags go up. We surrender. Whoops. He said, let me alone, you guys. I just want to hit. Well, if the first one was some kind of distance record, this one broke it. Did the same kid get the bat again?
Here comes the shower of towels.
He's got a section cleared out in the dugout. Nothing else.
I can guarantee you everybody's alert on this one. 1-2.
Well, there's an old baseball teaching technique which you probably heard as a kid. Throw your bat at the ball. Generate bat speed. But they mean the center of the diamond, not in the stands.
Way out in front, and he hammers it foul.
Bruce Delcatton, who had to dodge twice, a knuckleball pitcher who's grooming all these young hard throwers. Kind of unique. Another knuckleball pitcher in the park yesterday, Phil Necro, roams the minor leagues with all their top talent. In fact, Nuxie got a plaque dedicated yesterday. There's Bruce.
We're in the last half of the third. Braves batting with 2 out and nobody on, and Greg will be the next hitter if Treadway reaches. Jeff keeps fouling him off.
And Don Robinson changing up on his curveball now. Threw him a couple of hard curves, and then he's changing speeds. Hasn't wanted to give him one fastball in this series of pitches so far. You can tell what they think of Treadway. Make him hit the breaking ball.
Up in his eyes, he belts it to center. It dies out there, and Butler makes the catch.
There are some hitters you can throw 8 curveballs in a row, and they still get around the fastball like he just did.
On to the fourth in Atlanta. Just something to think about. Canseco and McGuire, of course, temporarily derailed as a combination by Canseco's injury. And Clark and Mitchell have done it for less than half a season, really.
Yeah, test of time is really it. Like Roger Mickey for one season, the best, the 61 and 54 home runs. But the Aarons and the Matthews and the Gehrigs and the Roos,
Mays and McCovey.
Yeah, they did it for 10, 12, 15 years.
To this point in the season, Clark and Mitchell have 94 RBIs between them, 42% of the Giants' total. Mitchell leads the majors, and Clark is second. Toward the hole, Thomas can't get it. Clark is aboard for Mitchell with nobody out in the fourth.
And that is why all the extra batting practice, more swings than he'd ever taken in his career in the wintertime, down at his home in New Orleans in the batting cage, paid off to be more of an average hitter. Take the pitchers, especially left-handers, who may not give you the fat pitches you can pull and get in the air for home runs. Give it a little bit, go the opposite way, and hit for average along with power. You only do that by working.
The next closest to Mitchell's 17 homers, Whitaker of the Tigers and Tettleton of the Orioles in the American League, each with 13. That's a strike. Glenn Davis of the Astros is second in this league with 12. Prior to this season, Mitchell's highest single-year total was the 19 homers he hit last year to go with 80 RBIs for the Giants. So this is the year he's blossomed.
Well, Kevin Mitchell talks a lot about working with Willie Mays in left field. All of spring training in Arizona, how much he helped him not just defensively, but also helped him think through situations with men on base and what they might throw. And another guy's Dusty Baker, the hitting instructor. Really calmed his temperament down a little bit. Kevin was known as he was a rough kid when he came out of the streets of San Diego. Everybody knows that by now. Gang-like kids, and he saw shootings and everything else. And he always seemed to be in a rage early in his career. Well, his temperament has been changed, I think, a lot by Dusty Baker.
Ooh, a vicious cut and a pitch up at his chin.
Well, it's been said before, but he reminds. I was talking to Jimmy Davenport, now a coach for the Cleveland Indians at third base, and he said that Kevin Mitchell reminds him more and more of Jim Ray Hart than anybody he's ever seen. Stocky, strong, aggressive.
Talking about going up there wailing.
Oh. He'll go up the ladder some more, I think.
Quick snap throw over, and Clark skips back.
That's the move that Dave Righetti kind of brought back for a left-hander. Only the mail now. That's good.
Sure he's not referring to Karl Malone of the Utah Jazz. Here comes on 1-2, and it's fouled off. You were talking about his background. He claims to have been shot 3 times.
And hit, not just shot at, hit.
And his brother Donald was murdered in gang-related violence some years ago.
You just saw him go into his 2-strike mode and foul off a really good pitch by Zane Smith. cut his stride down, cut his swing down, and just tried to put it in play.
A drive to left center field. Back goes Murphy to the track. Out of here. There's number 18 as he ups his major league leading total. It's the 5th that he's hit against Atlanta this year, and his 3rd in the last 24 hours.
Well, he had only 9 at the All-Star break last year, 19 total for the '88 season, and it was a breaking ball in that he hit on the fist, and the bat speed he generated through the ball just pummeled it out of the ballpark. I mean, there are very few have this kind of extreme strength.
It sounds ridiculous, but he did not hit this ball well.
No, did you see where Jody Davis' catcher's glove was going to kind of flip it like down and in? That's where he's going to catch it. Roger Craig is coming out now for some reason to talk to the home plate umpire, Jerry Davis. I wonder if he is alerting now. Somebody is warming up a left-hander. If Don Robinson, something didn't happen. Adley Hammaker is scheduled to start on Tuesday against Cincinnati. He's beginning to warm up, and Roger may have just said, hey, look, my pitcher, the supposition here, my pitcher may have gotten hurt. Can Hammaker get as much as he wants when he goes out to the mound, if he in fact comes in?
So Mitchell now with 18 homers and 53 RBIs to top all of baseball. And it's 1-1 to Maldonado, who grounded to short his first time up. Mitchell talking with Dusty Baker. There's Dusty with the sunglasses on in the foreground. Played briefly with the Giants toward the end of his career.
Well, when he was here in this
here in Atlanta,
we were talking about him being the next Henry Aaron. He got traded off, and there's so much pressure on Dusty Baker, the kid in this organization.
And he had some big seasons with the Dodgers, too. In the middle of that lineup when they called him Dr. Scald with Garvey and Say and the others. Reggie Smith. 2-2.
Another one of those cases. We're looking at Maldonado, who has it 5th behind Mitchell against the left-handers. Riles sometimes does against the right-handers, but they always talk about protection behind those big two. Doesn't really matter if you got guys getting on base in front like Brett Butler and Thompson. I mean, they got no place to put Will Clark or a Mitchell. And sometimes the guys ahead of you are more important than the hitter that hits behind you.
Right field shallow. Tommy Gregg battling the sun a little bit, puts it away for the first out in the 4th.
You know, the ideal situation that we're talking about tonight would be having like a Pete Rose batting first, McGriffey second, and Joe Morgan third, and the bench 4th. And then you got the protection of a Tony Perez behind you if you're Johnny Bench. And boy, the on-base percentage is ahead of guys, and that's what we're getting now from Brett Butler and Thompson.
But lineups like that come along once in a generation.
Probably not anymore after free agency and all the expansion and all else. Some say the last great teams were the 75 and 76 Cincinnati Reds. Great teams.
Riles struck out his first time. And behind on the count here, 0-2. A reminder, we'll present our State Farm Rules of the Game feature during the 7th inning stretch timeout. National League umpire Doug Harvey explains some of the tricky calls to you. Smith back to work.
Well, we talked last night as we saw balls flying out of here that didn't look like they should be going out. When the weather gets hot and humid here, and this park is, what, 1,000 feet above sea level, and the atmosphere has something to do with that. It's like Denver, the mile-high city, where the ball just flies. This is one of those parks where the ball just flies when the atmosphere is like it is last night and today. It's not taking anything away from Kevin Mitchell, but it sure does hurt young pitchers.
A ball and 2 strikes. Got him. 2 strikeouts for Smith. Riles the victim both times. That's why Russ Nixon, Bobby Cox, Bruce Dow Canton, and the people throughout the Braves system have to bring these young pitchers along, not just in terms of their physical technique, but mentally. You've talked about it many times, Tony. Young staff in a park like Fenway or Wrigley Field or Seattle.
Toronto, another great hitter's park. It's hard to sustain the pitching staff in those ballparks.
It's so easy to have their confidence crushed early.
Well, they may not be in this park much longer. Apparently they're having some problems. The lease runs out, I think, the end of the '90 season. They're talking Cobb County, just north of here, building another ballpark.
Andres Thomas, what a play if he completes it, and he gets the catcher, Kurt Manwaring, with a terrific play from the hole. But a single by Clark and a homer by Mitchell put the Giants in front, 2-0. Don Robinson is finished. Enter Atlee Hammaker, and the word is that Robinson pulled that left gluteus maximus, the same muscle he pulled the last time he pitched against the Braves at Candlestick on April the 15th. So all of you jokesters out there can fill in the blank. There's an obvious line here. He strained it on a pitch, not running the bases, we're told, and Don Robinson is done. Atlee Hammaker takes over.
The reason the home plate umpire's out there, Jerry Davis, to just tell Hammaker, yes, you can get all the pitches you want due to the injury. That was the reason, as we told you, that Craig went out to alert him. Hammaker, who had the torn rotator cuff surgery back in '84. And boy, this staff, and we talked about Dave Dravecki, who had a cancerous tumor removed from his deltoid muscle just this past winter. And Roger Craig's had to scramble for pitchers, but he's got a staff that is one of the top 3 in the American League.
Kelly Downs also on the DL with shoulder problems. They're also going to rework the mound. You've got Hammaker coming in, left-hander. And the way Robinson has been working from the right side, although you have Smith, a lefty, pitching for the Braves, but apparently the way they're striding and where their motion takes them has left the mound not to Hammaker's liking, so they're going to do a little work here.
And out comes Odie Kakey, used to play handball with his dad, now runs the complex for Houston Kissimmee. He's the head groundskeeper there, and when they were looking for somebody here, they told Bud Kakey's son Odie very quickly, can you do it? And he said, I'll take over. And they say this field's as good as it's been in many, many years.
You mentioned how Hammaker has rehabilitated both his shoulder and his career. This is a guy who was the starting pitcher for the National League in the '83 All-Star game at Comiskey Park. Fred Lynn got to him for a grand slam and a rare American League victory.
And he pitched that game when he did have shoulder problems and tried to pitch through it. He felt it was such a thrill to play in the All-Star game and pitch in it. And it may have gone anyway, but that didn't help.
While they work on the mound, a reminder for you, NBC's exclusive network coverage of the French Open continues tomorrow with exciting match play from the red clay of Roland Garros. Steffi Graf and Mats Wilander are defending their titles against the world's great tennis players, including Andre Agassi, who will try and become the first American to capture this illustrious Grand Slam event since Tony Traber way back in 1955. It's been 34 years since an American won the French. The French Open tomorrow on NBC Sports. Earlier, Tony, we were talking about Monday's baseball draft and the supposition that Ben McDonald, the 6'7" right-hander from LSU, will be the first choice by the Orioles. Here's some other players to look at. These are the first 5 selections. And these are some of the players.
You know, it's interesting. I talked to Eddie Farmer, who's a pretty good pitcher in his own right and now a scout, who for the Orioles, and he went down to see Ben McDonald, and he saw him last year and again this year. And when Raleigh Heeman, the general manager, said, well, what does your report tell you? And we looked at Ben McDonald at LSU, and Eddie Farmer said, if and when we draft him and we sign Ben McDonald, he is the best pitcher we have. You can throw him out on the mound the day he signs against a major league team, and he'll be our best. And they've got Greg Olson on that staff for Baltimore, and Harnish and Malacky and Ballard, who's pitching so well this year, still young. And to be able to say that about a Ben McDonald, 6'6", throws 95, great slider, curve, and change. What more can you have?
A member of the gold medal Olympic team this past year in Seoul, in addition to his exploits at LSU. Cunningham is an outfielder. You saw Earl Cunningham's name up there from Lancaster, South Carolina. Tyler Houston is the catcher out of Las Vegas that Tony was referring to. Jeff Jackson from Chicago, Illinois is an outfielder. And the other name you saw up on our list of 5 potential first-round picks is John Olerud, a first baseman from Washington State.
Well, after all the expansions and the weak quality of play, all you got to do is look at bench strength. Some of the teams in the major leagues this year, the quality of the last few years, and that's why you see the mistake has not been very good. Look at the Eastern Division American League. So they've lost a lot of key players, but they need an influx of a lot of kids in a hurry. And the hard part is not rushing them. You got to have 24 bodies on the Major League roster, and so often the old guys hang on, they become one-dimensional, the young kids are rushed, and you ruin kids along the way. Heck, didn't Pete Falcone, who hadn't pitched for 5 years, just get signed by the Dodgers? They're looking for a left-hander. He's out of baseball 5 years, and that's not a knock at Pete, who pitched for this team, and that's some good stuff. He's mid-30s.
You can throw left-handed, and if you're still ambulatory, you pretty much have a job in the bigs.
Let's see if he goes through his routine. Tommy Gregg has this routine. Perhaps got it from his football days as a punt returner and wide receiver, where he closes his eyes and visualizes a base hit off his bat. Sometimes he does it between pitches. If he fouls the ball off the take, he might go out again and do it.
Hamaker's first pitch, down and away for a ball. Gregg will be followed by Perry and Murphy.
You stay in the batter's box and you do that, and the guy quick pitches, and you're in trouble with your eyes closed, aren't you?
It's a very astute observation. Fouled off 1-1. Hamaker's 4-3 this year. 500 each of the last two. 9-9 and 88. 10-10 the year before, when he was the starting pitcher in the pennant-deciding game, Game 7 of the playoffs at St. Louis, and he lost it when Jose Oquendo wrapped a 3-run homer off him. They go to the 7th now at Fenway, same score. But Chicago, after trailing 3-0 following the Pendleton home run, jumps on top of the Cardinals 4-3. Two and two. Al Rosen, the Giants president, was characteristically blunt. Many front office people try and be diplomatic, but Rosen will speak his mind. He was disgusted with Hamaker following that 87 playoff. Here it comes on 2-2. Full count. The next year, Hamaker began complaining about his role on the team and about his contract, and Rosen said, "Oh yes, Atlee Hamaker, he of the hanging slider to Jose Oquendo." Talk about sticking the needle in.
We've talked about this staff, but you've got Rushland, about 40, who's had rotator cuff surgery. Krukow, who was disabled for a long time. Hamaker, Don Robinson. You look at Robinson, elbow and right shoulder, looks like a motorcycle jacket with all the zippers. He had surgery so many times. And you wonder if that will be the Achilles heel of this ball club. Injuries to the pitchers.
Hit toward right center. Butler will track it down. In straight away center, I should have said.
He tried to adjust. He bounced a couple of breaking balls wide and in the dirt, and then he tried to adjust and throw it on the outside corner. He hung a breaking ball.
So here comes Perry, and when you think about it, his troubles date back to last year. He was hitting .323 early in September, and then went 17 for his last 91 to wind up at exactly .300. This year, he's already endured an 0 for 36 streak. He did have 3 hits and 5 at-bats last night, but he's gone 124 trips, hitting third without an RBI. Marv Albert is standing by in New York. He's going to give us an update on how the Cubs took the lead at St. Louis. First chance we get.
But it's not like Gerald Perry hasn't had some men on in front of him. He is 9 for 52 with runners in scoring position.
It's the kind of stat you don't want widely circulated. Your agent isn't going to take that one to arbitration.
Over the last couple of years, he's been considered one of the best hitters. That's a real good base runner, hitting in the 3 spot. That's yeah, and that's what's surprising, that you're keeping him in the 3 spot.
There's a hit for him. He's got his batting average up over 250. Heck, he was in contention for the batting title, which was won by Tony Gwynn until late last year. As promised, here's my man, Marv Albert. Marvelous.
All right, Bob, and here is that key hit in St. Louis. It was Dwight Smith with this drive to the gap in left center. Bases loaded, double. 3 runs come across. The Cubs have come from behind, lead the slumping Cardinals now 4-3 in the 4th inning. Let's get back to Bob and Tony.
What was Whitey's comment? He said he never had a team in all his career as a manager play as badly as the Cardinals have the last couple of weeks.
Murphy fouls it out of play. Grounded to second his first time up.
You know, we just ran through so many of the injuries the Giants pitching staff has had, and you've got to ask the question many have. Is it the split-fingered fastball that's tearing up some of these arms? Now, all of them haven't thrown it, but the majority have. Like a slider, you know, Carlton and Guidry and guys threw it a lot, but if the delivery's right for it, fine. If the delivery's not right, I think it's the same thing with a split finger. You don't have the right delivery, it can hurt you.
Tying run at the plate in the last of the fourth. 1-1. Robinson, while he was in there, faced only 10 hitters over 3 innings. Pulled a muscle in his backside and has departed.
He flashes, yeah. Roger flashes a lot of signals that don't mean anything, obviously. Murph up and Perry with some speed. You may want to try and keep out of a double play, even though you are trailing by 2.
That'll make the seats also 1 and 2. You saw Manwaring looking over at Craig in the Giant dugout. Of course, what will often happen is you'll designate a coach or someone else to give the real sign, and you've got all those eagle eyes in the other dugout trying to pick up your signs, and you're going through a bunch of bogus ones, and it could be something very, very simple and direct coming from somebody else who the opposition doesn't have their eye on.
Could even be a trainer. That's happened. Well, Don Zimmer, the other who's so good, and I think Zimmer learned a lot of that from Roger Craig.
In '84, when Craig was the pitching coach for Sparky with the world champion Tigers, he had a very simple sign for a pitch out. There was a pipe along the edge of the dugout, and if Craig had his hand on the pipe, they pitched out. Everybody else was looking at Sparky, and he was going through everything, and it was simple: hand on the pipe, pitch out. Off the pipe, no.
That's the year he called almost every pitch that Lance Parrish called.
Hammaker taking lots of time. The pace of the game has definitely slowed. We've moved briskly through 3.5. A bouncer to third. Riles gets 1. Can they turn it? Yep. No runs a hit, and as a result of the DP, nobody left. Back after this from your local station. Maria, thanks very much. Bob Costas and Tony Kubak, Fulton County Stadium in Atlanta. The Giants on a single by Will Clark and a home run by Kevin Mitchell, his major league leading 18th in the 4th inning. Lead here 2-0 as they bat in the 5th. While we were gone, a Uribe fly to center. Hammaker, the new pitcher, was thrown out on a slow roller to third. 2 out, nobody on, and 0-1 to Brett Butler, who tries to drag a bunt and fouls it off. Butler, of course, started out in the Atlanta organization, a highly prized young player, and he went to Cleveland along with Brooke Jacoby for Len Barker during the pennant race of 1983. Remember, the Braves were division champions in '82 and in the race in late August the following year, and felt they needed a good veteran pitcher to put them over the hump. Barker never panned out. In fact, his whole career went downhill almost immediately, and Butler and Jacoby have become valuable players, especially Butler.
And the owner of the ball club, Ted Turner, wanted to get Brett Butler right back. Didn't he get fined for tampering and saying he wanted to get him back and make a trade? And they've been looking for a center fielder and a leadoff hitter with a high on-base percentage since then, or a combination of those things.
Third strikeout for Zane Smith. Except for the momentary lapse in the 4th, he's been effective. It remains 2-0 San Fran. They're alongside one of his coaches, Bobby Wine. Through their first 37 games, the Braves were right around 500, 18 and 19, and scoring about 4.5 runs a game. Since then, in their last 16, they've averaged 2 runs a game, been shut out 4 times, They've lost 11, won 4, and had that suspended game in St. Louis, and that's an average of 2 runs a game, even with the 6 they got last night. They've wasted a whole lot of good pitching by their young staff. Andres Thomas swings on the first pitch. Clark and Thompson. It's Thompson for the catch. Here's the lineup next Saturday. Tony and I will be at the Kingdome. First look national, the Kingdome, the Sky Dome. You know, actually, Tony and I are going to the Kingdome just because we'd like to see Seattle play. But the game of the week will be at the Sky Dome.
And that fellow in that inset, in that picture, the MVP of 2 years ago, George Bell, the last ball game in Exhibition Stadium, Toronto, 10th inning, he finished it off with a 2-run home run. Boy, are they struggling. Toronto is really scuffling, sitting in last place. They're one of the cold favorites, along with Milwaukee, people felt, in the East.
Meanwhile, that division is led by the Baltimore Orioles, who are on fire for Frank Robinson. A 3-game lead. Deion James had an infield hit as his roller stopped dead along the chalk at first base back in the second. Hitting .274 as the game began. 1-2 to him.
This is kind of unexpected to have to throw Atlee Hammaker out there for Roger Craig, and it may mess up his pitching plans, but boy, he's used somewhat of a bullpen by committee. Gossage got the save last night. He's been resurrected, although he doesn't pitch a lot. Lefferts has been outstanding as a closer.
Clark with the grab. That's fully extended, and it's in the web.
It's exactly what Roger Craig was saying when we showed the shot where he talked about the home runs, but he also said this guy is one heck of an athlete, and you just saw. He doesn't just go out there with a glove in his hand because it's cold outside on certain days. He uses it. Very, very athletic, playing well off the line for Deion James. He starts the 3-6-3 very well. Why are you looking so stunned? Something I said?
I was thinking about your remark about wearing a glove just because it's cold outside.
Sometimes I said, not today.
What was it that Red Barber said one time about a particularly horrendous defensive outfielder? This is Jody Davis. Maldonado's going to take care of it.
Save it for next year. Next year or next inning,
hey,
at least.
If I save it for baseball next year on NBC, people will be holding their breath for a long, long time. I'll give it to Musburger. He'll tell you all about it on CBS. This creature, who has taken up residence this season at Fulton County Stadium, would be Rally. He hangs out in the Rally Alley out behind the fence in right center. And they also have Homer the Brave. And they're a fine tandem, but they'll never take the place of the immortal Chief Nakahoma. They tore the Chief's teepee down, and this ballpark has never been the same.
So you preferred talking about Rally and Homer than Red Barber's great line?
We're going to get to that. Here's Robbie Thompson, followed by Clark and Mitchell. We're in the 6th. 2-0 San Francisco. Zane Smith with a record of 1-7. This is high and away, 3-0.
Giants lead the National League in runs scored, hits, total bases, triples, home runs, base on balls, sacrifice hits, and they're also in the top 3 in pitching, leading double plays, so they've got a combination of good things going, Bob.
And most importantly, leading the division by a game over the Reds. Center field, Murphy. That's the first out.
Well, they wanted to get Murph out of center field last year to try and preserve those legs. With age, I think they preferred him in right field, but they just don't have anybody else can handle center field, so he's had to go back out there. And in this heat, and especially last summer, the hottest summer on record for many, many years, I think it took its toll on Murph.
Clark singled ahead of the Mitchell homer in the 4th. Came in hitting .360. He's 1 for 2. Bobby Ojeda of the Mets is one of baseball's thinking men. Here's what he says. Although, in truth, when you look at that, it doesn't rank as one of the greatest insights in the history of baseball. No. You got a guy leading the majors in homers and RBIs behind you, so of course they have to pitch to you. Well, they had to pitch to Maris because Mantle was sitting behind him. He had 61 homers, never got an intentional walk all year. The 0-2 pitch.
Yeah, that's one of the great trivia questions of all time. The year that Roger hit 61 in 1961, how many intentional walks did he get?
I believe I just answered the question.
A big 0. He didn't get any. It was a Mickey, and Mickey had a great April.
Boy. Hit sharply, but right at Treadway. So Mitchell's going to bat here with 2 out and nobody on. Despite that rather mundane observation by Ojeda, I stand by my comment that he is a thinking man's pitcher. Always a pleasure to talk to. Has a lot of insight into the game. Unfortunately, didn't favor us with one of them there. Here comes Mitchell.
Boy, your Kirari tip tongue is at it again today.
Well, it's all done in good nature. That's a strike.
Bobby Wine to the left, kind of a bench manager, along with Russ Nixon.
Check down at first. Eric Gregg says no.
It was a changeup up in the strike zone that lit Kevin Mitchell's eyes up. Will Clark, a low ball hitter. I think Kevin Mitchell more upstairs. I mean, not that he doesn't hit pitches downstairs. Oh, look at this.
This ball's hit hard. Murphy turns and gets there. He scorched it, but the Giants go in order in the top half of the 6th. Still 2-0 on the strength of Mitchell's homer.
When Bobby Cox was the manager of Atlanta, he had a young catcher with great bat potential and kept throwing runners out, but to the center fielder. And Bobby Cox made Dale Murphy an outfielder. Made him a center fielder, then they moved him to right. What was Dale Murphy's? Wasn't his father's great line with that strong arm? They kept stealing him crazy. And he said if second base was a center fielder, he would throw a lot of guys out. 1-2 accurate. Now, that may not be as good a line, Murph's father, as Red Barber's line, which I know you will eventually get to. As fans wait.
And we will eventually get to it. Smith is on deck and then Treadway. It isn't all that funny. I don't know if it's worth the wait. Butler into right center with Maldonado, and it's Canby who'll make the catch. Let's check the scoreboard. Toronto lengthens its lead to 9-2 over the Red Sox. And it remains 4-3 at Busch Stadium in St. Louis. The Cubs had trailed 3-0 early. Here's Zane Smith. He grounded to first his first time up. Hammaker has been in there since the 4th. Don Robinson had to give way with an injury. Thought about dragging a bunt and takes outside.
You know, last year in September, Toronto went up to Fenway Park and 3 left-handers beat the Red Sox up there. And it's something that nobody could ever find in the record had ever happened. I guess they did the first 2 today. Cerruti last night gets a win, and today Flanagan scheduled a pitch. If he got the win, that'll be 5 left-handed pitchers in a row have beaten Boston in Fenway. I think Steve is scheduled tomorrow.
You mentioned that Toronto is struggling, but in that division, it's almost impossible to fall out of the race. So Cito Gaston has more than ample time to right that ship. They're over 500 with him at the helm thus far, and get them right back in it. And you know the atmosphere is going to be energized in that new Sky Dome with all the fans pouring through. Tried to do it again, and this time Manwaring pounces on it and throws him out. All right, so here it is. And talk about the big buildup.
I don't have a drum for the drum roll or the horns.
The timing is sort of lost. It's been an inning since you noted that Will Clark doesn't wear that glove on certain days just because it's cold outside. And it might have been Babe Herman, who was a big hitter and an almost comical outfielder, about whom Red Barber said in the early days of baseball on the radio, there's Babe Herman out in left field wearing a glove as it is a league custom. Cutting assessment. of his defensive skills.
Wasn't Babe the guy who kept ending up on third base when there was already somebody standing there?
He once tripled into a double play, is the way the story goes. And a couple of times was hit on the head by fly balls. But he also hit over 390 one year for the Brooklyn Dodgers. So much for the ancient history lesson. Now here's Treadway, who's 0 for 2. Hit softly into right. It's going to settle in there in front of Maldonado for a 2-out single.
Well, second base has been a problem. Now they've got a guy who plays the position more than adequately. Giants and Kevin Mitchell's 2-run home run, still with the lead, but also can hit, get on base, and you can move base runners with him. Remember, they went out and got Damaso Garcia. They thought he would help out. They got him from Toronto. Then his knees went, and he retired. Now he's hurt again up in Montreal. They had Hubbard there, who was very good for many years. High on base percentage, tough on the double play. He's at Oakland. Treadway may be around here for a while. I like the way this guy approaches hitting, too, especially against left-handers. He won't try and pull everything. You go up the middle or the opposite way.
Tommy Gregg, the right fielder, fouled out, fly to deep center. Obviously, Robinson doesn't qualify for the decision here, so Hammaker could win it, with the Giants leading 2-0. Beginning Monday, 7 of the next 13 games starting Monday for the Giants are against the Reds, their closest pursuers in the West. Cincinnati's a game back. They'll play 4 in Cincinnati, then 3 at Candlestick in the space of about 2 weeks.
About the Giants, they have been starting to play after April. They've played much better on the road, which is always very important.
Look out for the Astros, though. They've won 8 in a row. They're a game and a half behind, and talk about playing well on the road. They're 17-7 on the road and 5 under 500. Very strange for them at the Astrodome, where they usually excel.
Well, Scott pitches a big game again yesterday. Jim Clancy's starting to throw the ball better again after a few bad outings. Here's what the standings look like. Padres make the trade. Kruk and Reddy leave. James from Philadelphia goes to the Padres. Dodgers still looking for left-hander, aren't they? Fernando Valenzuela again struggled along.
He pitched pretty well, though, last night. They lost 1-0, but he didn't do badly. There's a walk. So with 2 out, a soft single to right by Treadway. And then a walk on 4 pitches to Tommy Gregg. And here comes Gerald Perry with an RBI opportunity. He's gone 125 at-bats without one.
Well, he had 2 situations last night. First and second, 2 outs. First and third, 2 outs. He couldn't produce. And if you don't think there's a pressure on a guy like this, as long as it has taken, it certainly is something. And everything's going through his mind. And here come the rally caps with the tape on.
Last year, as he hit an even 300, he drove in 74 runs with 8 homers. He's a line drive hitter, not a power guy. The 8 home runs were the lowest figure for any regular first baseman in the National League. And he can run a little bit. He'll steal you 25 to 30 bases. A chopper that's not going to get a run home, that's for sure. Uribe throws to first, and they get the out there. So that'll do it. And now it's 126. Incredible drought without an RBI. Back after this from your local station. Take to get a 2-out hit. For the most part, the answer has been more than the Braves are capable of, especially in the last 3 weeks or so. They have been anemic offensively. There's just no other way to put it.
And Russ Nixon has really had no one else to put in the number 3 spot to replace Gerald Perry and get him down the line, because Gant can't do it. He is struggling. Lonnie Smith, who is the good leadoff hitter here, he's disabled. So if you wanted to take the pressure off Gerald Perry, you can't get him out of the 3 spot, because he needs Thomas, who's been hitting a lot of home runs lately, to protect Murphy. So he's really had to scramble with his lineup.
2-0 to Maldonado, leading off in the 7th. Zane Smith has retired 9 in a row since Kevin Mitchell's home run in the 4th. 2-0 San Francisco.
I believe the hitter requested that he take his chain off. I guess that started right here in Atlanta when Pascual Perez came out with, several hundred ounces of gold around his neck as a pitcher.
Here's the irony. Look at the hitter, Maldonado. He looks like Sammy Davis Jr. up there.
Yeah, but the sun or the lights reflect off the gold from a pitcher into the hitter's eyes, which you probably had surmised before I told you.
So a leadoff walk to Maldonado, but now our thanks to Maria Shriver, Bob Costas, and Tony Kubek, and obviously this is an awkward situation. It's our job to bring you the ball game, and we don't pretend that this is anything other than the world of fun and games, and it can be a jarring transition from the events of global significance in Beijing to a ball game in Atlanta. But that's the transition we're presented with. So here's what's happened. Maldonado walked to open this inning. The count is now full to the next hitter, Ernest Riles. Top half of the 7th, 2-0 Giants on Kevin Mitchell's homer. And the payoff pitch. Struck him out, runner going, throw to second high. Otherwise they would have had him, and Maldonado has the steal. So he's at second with 1 out.
Three and 2. Roger Craig has the runner going. A good pitch to throw on, but not a very strong throw from Jody Davis. Forces Treadway to leave the bag to get the throw. So Jody, whose hitting skills have diminished somewhat. Jody caught a lot of ball games. He averaged about 150 games a year catching in Chicago, all those day games, for about 4 or 5 years straight. I think it really hurt him. He's only 32 or 33. A lot of his skills have gone.
Settles back into his crouch and flashes the sign to Zane Smith, who pitches to the other team's catcher, Kurt Manwaring. Roller toward Perry. Good hop for him. Unassisted put out. On to third with 2 out. Candy Maldonado. Ernest Riles with that strikeout a moment ago, on which Maldonado stole second, now has a dubious hat trick. He's put 3 Ks in the scorecard next to his name. Zane Smith has 4 strikeouts, 3/4 of them against this guy.
I would think they're going to intentionally walk Uribe, and that's how things change. If Don Robinson is still in the ball game, they pitch to Uribe. But with Hammaker following, now he replaced Robinson in the 4th. Hammaker is switch hitter, but he's not Don Robinson.
In fact, Don Robinson is the only active pitcher who has ever himself been given an intentional walk. When he was pitching for the Pirates, the Phillies walked him intentionally back in '84. Hammaker is going to bat. During that same season, remember when Chuck Tanner let Bill Madlock manage the last game of the year? Madlock put Robinson in left field, and Don went 1 for 3.
Robinson has pinch hit already twice this year.
He had a single in his only at-bat today, speaking of Robinson, and that brings his average for the year to exactly 300. So you're talking about a guy who actually isn't just a good hitting pitcher. He'd be a good hitter if he were an everyday player.
In fact, there were thoughts when he did have the shoulder surgery for 2nd or 3rd time and the elbow surgery, and he's had knee problems, and making him an outfielder or first baseman. And someday when he's done pitching, maybe he'll go to the other league and be a DH when he swings the bat.
Billy Martin used Rick Rhoden, Robinson's old Pirate teammate, as a DH in one game last year at Yankee Stadium. When Rhoden and Robinson were each in Pittsburgh, they had certainly the best hitting pitching staff in the league. A ball outside to Hammaker.
Zane Smith has not been particularly sharp with his control, especially the first 3 or 4 innings, so he's got a fairly high pitch total, and Russ Nixon in this situation does have his bullpen up.
Slice down the right field line. Greg over and in foul ground. He had him played perfectly. They figured he wasn't going to pull Zane Smith. And Greg over near the line is able to track the liner down in foul ground. Here's another edition of the State Farm Rules of the Game. Here's one fan who finds the action very scintillating. And this is without the benefit of listening to our broadcast, which normally can lull anyone to sleep.
Have you seen the new official National League Baseball, William D. White?
Yeah, I have, as a matter of fact.
Are you able to do with this baseball what Ray Palacios of the Kansas City Royals can do? He can mouth it. What an incredible guy.
That is
what
amazing.
Trick.
Did you see that picture in Sports Illustrated this week? Palacios literally has a regulation baseball in his mouth. Exactly what the value of that particular stunt is, I don't know. But
well, Bobby Ojeda would like to take this baseball and perhaps try it on you.
Murphy on the first pitch handcuffs Uribe, but he recovers and gets him.
You just saw the quickness of an Uribe. Ball was hit hard. Slapped it down. He was on it like a cat, battling a ball of yarn in the corner. He does things unorthodox, like Tony Fernandez and Alfredo Griffin. So many of the Dominican players who grew up on those rough infields in San Pedro de Macorís. And they play a lot one-handed, because if they got in front of balls, they'd have gotten hit in the face a lot. But he is so quick.
It's not just playing him one-handed, but as you've often pointed out, circling the baseball so you can play it side saddle. On the first pitch, Thomas gives his countryman another chance. Swinging on the first pitch is pretty much typical of Andres Thomas, who walked 14 times last year while striking out 95.
Thomas is at 6 of the last 8 Braves home runs, which I think is... Blauser's got one and Gant has got the other. And we'll tell you how the 3-4 hitters are struggling.
Deion James robbed of a hit his last time when his liner was speared by a lunging Will Clark near the first base line.
Think about the Braves, they're young pitching. They've gotten decent work out of the bullpen from Acker and Baver and Assenmacher, but the young pitchers keep in the games.
From the outfield grass, Thompson to Clark. Hammaker makes very quick work of the Braves in the 7th on 3 ground balls. Atlanta's down to their last 6 outs, still 2-zip. 42-year-old Darrell Evans back in Atlanta, where his big league career began. With the retirement of Mike Schmidt this week, he is the active home run leader. He's hit 3 this year to bring his total of 406, right behind Duke Snider's 407 on the all-time list. And Evans is only 2 years removed from hitting 34 for the '87 Tigers. Here he is in the early 70s with teammates Hank Aaron and Davey Johnson, the year 1973, when all 3 of them topped 40 homers, and that's the only time 3 teammates have hit 40 or more in the same season in the history of baseball.
In '73, that was amazing because he scored 114, walked 124 times, drove in 104.
Brett Butler again thinking about dragging one, lets it go by, and it's a called strike 2.
You know, Bobby Cox has done that before. You'll get guys like Craig Nettles, young, older players who know how to play the game. You can pinch hit and spot play once in a while, but mainly to pass on some of their knowledge to the younger players.
On 3 pitches, Butler is gone. He struck out his last 2 times up against Smith. Terry Mulholland getting ready. The Giants lead here 2-0 as they bat in the 8th. Now you talk about Darrell Evans. Sure, he's 42 years old and not the player he once was. But he hit 22 home runs last year for the Tigers, 34 the year before. In '85, he hit 40 and became the oldest man in history to win a home run title at age 38.
He's one of the reasons, along with losing Parrish a couple years ago and Gibson last year, why the Tigers are struggling. That's a lot of run production to lose. It's like the Yankees now. Like you lose Clark, Winfield, and Cordell Washington 1 year. I wonder why some teams aren't hitting that Eastern Division American League. That's why.
Robbie Thompson, 0 for 3 today. Had been a hot hitter coming in. 3 homers in the last week, including one last night.
And I see the grounds crew starting to stir near the tarp. I don't know if that means that there are some rains are in the area as they were last night.
It is sprinkling a little bit.
We'll start gathering and getting closer to that tarp. Odie Kinky, the head groundsman, has got a weather report coming. You know, Zane Smith's throwing the ball harder now than he did the first 4 or 5 innings. He's had a pretty good a pitch that Bruce Del Canton teaches. You've heard us say the cut fastball so many times. But what used to be the true slider breaks late, 6 to 8 inches. He's had a pretty good one of those today.
Pass Smith. Thomas to his left. Scoops it up. Throws on the run and got him. So Thomas flashes his range. And up comes Clark.
There's never been any question about the athleticism of an Andre Thomas, which he just displays now, but his work ethic at times, was it a couple of years ago, they fined him for showing up late to the ballpark, missing a bus a couple of times. And now Russ Nixon has gotten to him, and he's become a pretty good all-round performer.
Clark 1 for 3. Takes inside. People talk about him as a potential Triple Crown candidate. It's something the Giants president Al Rosen can relate to. In 1953, Rosen had one of the great years in modern times. A sharp shot to short, but Thomas will take care of him. And we'll tell you about Rosen's exploits when we come back. We move to the last half of the 8th. Robinson and Hammaker have combined to shut the Braves out to this point. This would be Al Rosen in the sunglasses rather than the first gentleman sitting on Mr. Rosen's lap. In 1953, playing with Cleveland, as we move to the last half of the 8th, and the rain is really coming down hard now. Rosen was the American League's MVP. He hit .336 with 43 homers, 145 RBIs, and he slugged .613. You need the protection now. Raining very hard as Jody Davis starts it in the last of the 8th. Hammaker's behind him 3-0. So anyway, Rosen leads the American League in homers and RBIs that year, and his .336 is 1 point behind Mickey Vernon's league-leading .337 for the Senators. Davis taking all the way. It's 3-1. On the last day of the season, Rosen went 3 for 4 and fell a point short. 4 for 4 would have won him the batting title and the 1953 Triple Crown. One of the great players of his era.
Well, quirky things do happen to leap year babies. Al was born February 29th. What does that make him, 17 years old? I thought throw that in and he'd be very interested. Ali Hammaker, before he went 3-0, and he did struggle the first hitter that he pitched to rebound some curveballs, has really used very few pitches. 4 innings, he just threw 34 pitches up until Jody Davis. So he's been very efficient.
The umpires have made no move to halt play. There's some blue skies out in the distance beyond the rim of the stadium. Best guess is it's a passing shower, but it's no longer a drizzle, that's for sure. Here's the 3-2 pitch. Goes after it, lines it into right center, and it drops for a hit. So the tying run to the plate in the person of Ron Gant, who has twice flied to center. Last year, his 19 home runs led all rookies in the major leagues, and he also led all National League rookies in hits, runs, and extra base hits. Chris Sabo of the Reds, of course, was the Rookie of the Year.
The third catcher, John Russell, goes into pinch run for Jody Davis. So Jody, a very slow runner, and Russell, average at best. I guess I'd be charitable.
But they don't use up an additional player. By using him, he can go in the game and put the tools on back of the plate in the top of the 9th. Hammaker to Gant. Wraps it, and a great play by Riles. From his knees, he gets the force. On to first, safe.
Whoa, a very, very close play for Eric Gregg, the first base umpire. An outstanding play for a guy who is not supposed to be noted as a defensive specialist, Ernest Riles. An excellent pivot. Excellent pivot by Robbie Thompson. He did it once earlier today. Look at Riles. Playing up even with a bag. The ball's hit like a bullet off the wet grass now, so the ball's skidded. Clark is trying to punch him out, and Eric Gregg says, Gant has outstanding speed. He just showed it. Good call by Gregg.
So now as Jose Alvarez continues to loosen up in the Atlanta bullpen. Zane Smith will be hit for. Here's Baroa, the pinch batter, with Gann at first and 1 out. And a ball down low. Zane Smith worked 8 innings, gave up just 4 hits. Unfortunately for him, 2 came in succession in the 4th, a single by Clark, and Mitchell's homer over the wall in left center. He walked 3, struck out 5, and he was generally very effective. And yet right now he stands to lose for the 8th time in 9 decisions. A drive to right. Maldonado has it lined up. That's the 2nd out.
And does that make Ernest Rouse play that much bigger? Another ball hit like a bullet.
Treadway is due, but we're due to get an update from Marv.
Thank you, Bob. In St. Louis, the Cardinals move back on top of the Cubs by virtue of this RBI single off the bat of Tony Pena. Tom Brunansky scoring. The Cardinals now lead the Cubs 5-4 in the 7th. Back to Bob and Tony.
Okay, Marv, still raining, but it's quickly eased up. Kibler's the crew chief, umpiring at 2nd today. Checking the skies, but it looks like we're going to make it through uninterrupted. Treadway singled his last time. He's 1 for 3. Gann at first with 2 out, last of the 8th. The Braves in danger of being shut out for the 5th time in their last 17 games. And over that stretch, they've barely averaged 2 runs a game.
And your offense is doing such a poor job. You've got injuries, nobody driving in runs. You pull your horns in, you don't steal, you're always behind. And Gann is an excellent base stealer, but really with a left-hander out there and down by 2, you don't want to take any chances. You wouldn't want to do it anyway with 2 outs, but I'm talking about the pitch, maybe the hitter before that. You might have considered it.
The 1-1 pitch, but first a throw to first, and Gann is back easily. We'll return to Atlanta momentarily, but right now, another report from NBC News. Thank you again, Maria. While we were gone here, Jeff Treadway hit a fly ball to left field, which was caught by Kevin Mitchell, and that ended the mild Brave threat in the last half of the 8th. So we're moving now to the 9th. The rain has eased a little bit, and we're going to take this commercial break with the Giants leading 2-0 and preparing to bat in the top half of the 9th. Jose Alvarez is the new Atlanta pitcher, and so this relief break is brought to you by Rolaids. And here's a look at this week's American and National League leaders in the standings for the Rolaids Relief Man Awards. Eckersley and Mike Schooler of Seattle out in front in the American League. In the National League, a pair of left-handers, Mark Davis, the former Giant, now with the Padres, who has been perfect, 17 out of 17 save opportunities, and Franco of Cincinnati, who was the Rolaids Award winner last year in the National League. We'll be tracking total points awarded on the basis of wins, losses, saves, and points detracted for blown saves.
Alvarez pitching. Russell, who pinch ran, comes in to do the catching.
And Mitchell wraps the first one foul by the man they call Pooch, Bill Fahey, in the third base coaching box.
Alvarez, who has a good curveball, this is his first time out there in about 4 or 5 days. He threw yesterday. The knee bothered him. Threw again today. They went to get some tests. Throwing to John Russell over from the Philadelphia Phillies.
Down low, 1-1. Alvarez last year at age 32 became one of the oldest rookies in Major League history, and is stuck with the Braves this season. As you saw, he's put pretty good numbers up in the first 2 months. Curveball lined to left, and Mitchell just continues to sizzle. 2 for 4 now, and one of the 2 times they retired him, he hit a shot to deep center, and Murphy took it over his shoulder.
Well, Mitchell just hit Alvarez's best pitch is curveball, but it was not a good spot. It was a hanging curve, and when he warmed up before the game today and yesterday, with the sore knee, he just couldn't get on top of it, get the good rotation to make it bite. So he threw a hanger right there, and Mitchell jumped all over it.
Maldonado 0 for 2 with a walk. Takes high. Before this series, the Giants have played 33 straight against the National League East. They went 19 and 14 in that stretch. They're now 11 and 8 against teams from the West, and leading here 2-0.
Candy Maldonado, when he hits best, his best years in the minor leagues and with the Giants a couple of years ago when he hits the ball in the right center field. But he's become so conscious of the fastballs inside, he's pulling off the pitch, the shoulders jerking off, and this is the kind of situation where you'd want to hit the ball the opposite way.
Here it comes on 2-0. And here's one driven to deep left. It is hooking and up against the screen for a home run. And look at the play made by the fan leaning out to take it off the carom for the souvenir. A pair of 2-run home runs in this game.
Looked like a changeup or a forkball that stayed inside and didn't go down at all. The kind of pitch with Maldonado struggling trying to hit the fast stuff, the hard stuff, you wouldn't want to throw in that kind of spot.
Third of the year for Candy.
Is that a forkball grip in his glove from that center field camera?
It didn't do a thing, whatever it was.
I don't know if it was a split finger with the fingers spread, but it just tailed away a little bit, didn't go down.
Watch this play. Watch this guy lean out.
Well, that guy, the first guy made a lousy play, missed it. Now this guy did all right.
Boy, a harsh critique of people without gloves.
If you're going to do play-by-play on fans catching foul balls, let's be objective. It's a bad play and a good play.
Riles hoping to make contact against Alvarez, something he failed to do against Zane Smith. Struck out all 3 times he faced Zane. So, the 4th inning opened with a Clark single followed by a Mitchell homer. Here in the 9th, a Mitchell single and a Maldonado round tripper right down the line and left. 4-0 San Francisco. Puts his bat on the ball, and Perry retires him.
Look from that center field camera. Is it a forkball or a split-fingered fastball? It was an off-speed pitch of some kind. Don't know with all the white that you see on the ball if it's jammed between those 2 fingers, but it just doesn't do a whole lot. Stays right there, too high in the strike zone for Candy Maldonado.
Couldn't have put it on a tee any better for him. And Waring's 0 for 3. He was robbed of a hit his 2nd time up to end the 4th inning. Hit a slow bounder deep in the hole at shortstop. And Thomas made a backhanded play and a quick throw on the move to get it. Curveball misses. 1-1.
Dusty Baker doing a little hitting instructing to Candy. Even after he hit the home run. And it looked like he's talking about keeping the shoulder in.
Well, you know, sometimes in coaching in any sport, the best time to make a point is after the player has done it correctly, while it's still fresh in his mind, rather than to reprimand him after he's done it incorrectly.
The interesting thing, Dusty was talking around the batting cage yesterday, saying, you know, Maldonado had a good year a couple of years ago. He's become a little hard-headed. And he said, finally, now that he's reached about the bottom of the barrel, he is coming to me. And he said, that's the way you've got to handle certain hitters. They've got to come to you. Then they're more receptive, as you said, Bob.
Thomas lobs it over to Perry, and that's the 2nd out. In the last half of the 9th, the Braves have Tommy Gregg, Gerald Perry, and Dale Murphy do. So had it remained a 2-0 game, it could have been interesting if someone could have gotten aboard ahead of Murph. But the way the Braves have been hitting, 4 runs with 3 outs left is like Mount Everest.
See very slowly going to the Giants dugout, Mike Lacoste, who has been a closer for this ball club, along with Lefferts. As you said, it's been a bullpen by committee. I wonder if Mike Lacoste is going to come on to finish the game.
Treadway on to Perry. So 3 straight ground ball outs after the 2-run homer by Maldonado that doubles the San Francisco lead. You got a brief look at the pitch counter in the left hand of Braves pitching coach Bruce Dal Kenton. The way to keep track of the pitches thrown, Zane Smith threw over 100 before they got him out of there. Allowed just 2 earned runs, but stands to be the loser. Mike Lacoste comes in now in the last of the 9th, and the home run Maldonado hit deprives Lacoste of a save opportunity. They have a lead of greater than 3 runs, so Lacoste can't get credit for a save as he starts here in the 9th. Hammaker was very effective out of the bullpen. allowed just 3 hits in 5 innings of work and walked only 1. The Braves have but 4 hits total off Robinson, who worked 3 innings, and Hammaker, who worked the next 5. All 4 Atlanta hits are singles, and never more than 1 in any inning.
May mean, though, for Roger Craig when they go to Cincinnati, kind of an important series. He loses Hammaker as he went a greater distance than he would have liked today. Have to come up with another starter for next Tuesday. Lacoste has 6 staves, Gossage 3, Lefferts 9. Let's come up with that split-fingered fastball. Helped him out in left-handed hitters.
Mitchell over toward the line, and in fair ground, his body in foul ground, but reaching back to glove it in fair ground. Mitchell records the first out. A little bit like the play where he went with the bare hand on the Ozzie Smith ball in St. Louis. A legendary play already.
You know, see how nicely you documented that play-by-play by Mitchell? That's what you do the next time the foul ball goes in the stands. Journalism, my lad.
Perry tries to butt his way aboard. On the wet grass, it stops dead, and Lacoste throws it into another area code. Perry to at least second, and he stops there.
Base hit, E1. Didn't have a good grip. Aside from that, it did have a little dew on it. Throws it away. Ball took a funny hop, and Manwaring perhaps should have yelled a little louder where he could have gotten it facing first base, but Lacoste gets in his way and throws it away. You would not teach a catcher or a pitcher to field the ball that way. They want you to go down with the glove hand and the bare hand so you can get a better grip.
Murphy has hit the ball on the ground all 3 times, 0 for 3. Hit into a double play once. As we mentioned very early in the game, hasn't hit a homer in exactly a month. Last hit one on May 3rd. Here's Thompson. Murph wears an 0 for 4 collar, and Perry goes to third with 2 out.
When you look at Lacoste's numbers coming in today, he's pitched just 36 innings and he's walked 21, struck out just 15, so he's been in and out of trouble in almost every one of his relief appearances.
Gerald Perry down at third is 2 for 4 today, was 3 for 5 last night, so he is beginning to hit the ball well after an 0 for 36 streak, and his batting average is creeping up to around 255. That's fouled back and into the seats, but the dismaying string of at-bats without an RBI continues now, and it's reached 127 for a hitter of this quality, batting third in the lineup.
It's like that's almost a fifth of the season. 162 game schedule. It's just, you think you'd luck into one, huh? Lacoste with that herky-jerky motion, tough to pick up his delivery. And as we said, with the forkball, he's a little sneaky fast in the slider, but the forkball has really made him a pretty good relief pitcher. There it was, but too high.
Breaking ball, Thomas bounces it down to Thompson, who throws him out just as the skies open again, and it's really pouring here. As the Giants poured it on the Atlanta Braves. They won the first 2 games of this series, 7-6 last night, 4-0 today. Atlee Hammaker got the win. He's 5-3. Zane Smith, who pitched very well, is the loser. His record is now 1-8. And we'll be right back.